Hey, I'm the poet and classical composer Andrew Lloyd Fry. This is the third part of my series on Four Quartets by T.S. Eliot, and this video we're going to be looking at East Coker. So first thing, I had mentioned that all four of the sections, there's four sections, those sections have titles. They're all locations, and knowing a little bit about those locations I think can be insightful for the poem. And I would say none of the locations are like common knowledge things. Like if it's like New York City, that would mean something. So I think it's really helpful to know what those are, or where they are, or what they mean. So East Coker is a place in England, and the significance of it is T.S. Eliot's family heritage came from East Coker. So he was American, grew up in St. Louis, moved to England, and stayed there, I think pretty much the rest of his life. But there was this place in England where, his family, the Eliots, kind of were from. So if we connect that with our conversation, we've talked about this is a lot about time, and East Coker being the past, going back like generations. Okay, so we're going to look at a little bit of some of what I feel like are more significant parts and lines. So we're going to start with section 1, East Coker. In my beginning is my end. In succession, houses rise and fall, crumble, are extended, are removed, destroyed, restored, or in their place is an open field or factory or bypass. So that kind of keeps going, and it's kind of like this broad picture of time and somewhat a little bit of like futility. It's like the house is built, but if you look at it over time, it's going to be destroyed. It's going to fall apart. It's going to turn back into dirt. And there's different examples of that as you read down this, but it all feels very similar. And it also feels very cyclical. So it's like the tree turns into wood, or the tree is cut down and burned for wood, which is turned to ash, which is turned to dirt. So it's like, feels like broad, like over time what's happening. So we're talking about like, if we're looking at time at like 100-year span or 500-year span or 1,000-year span, these are the kinds of cycles we're going to see if we look at it with that perspective. And then going down, this is still in section 1, and a time for living and for generation, and a time for the wind to break the loosened pane, and to shake the wainscot where the field mouse trots. So that feels like a reference to Ecclesiastes, like a time to be born, a time to die, kind of echoing that, but it's like not quoting it. Okay, so there's more there, but that feels like kind of the general idea on that. So skipping ahead, this is still in section 1. On a summer midnight, you can hear the music of the weak pipe and the little drum, and see them dancing around the bonfire. The association of man and woman. Skipping down, 2 and 2, necessary conjugation. I'm actually not sure what that word is. Holding each other by hand or the arm. Skipping down again, leaping through the flames or joined in circles, rustically solemn or in rustic laughter, lifting heavy feet in clumsy shoes, earth feet, loam feet, lifted in country mirth. So for me, knowing that East Coker is a place of his heritage, this to me sounds like almost a picture of seeing the generations that have gone before, and there's more in there that kind of would signify they're no longer living, like they're feeding the corn. It also feels like this glimpse at the past that feels a little more pure. So like there's that section in section 1 where it's like distracted by distraction from a distraction, and wind and unwholesome lungs, and that feels like this very modern picture, and it's kind of negative. And this looks like kind of like a pure, more simple time. I would also say broader. I think it's more than just his generations going back, and it feels like humanity's, going back hundreds and thousands of years, and the generations. So that's what I feel like is being represented there. Okay, so one more thing I wanted to hit on section 1. At the end, out of nowhere, there's a line, "Out at sea, the dawn wind wrinkles and slides." So it's like, it's not talking about ocean or water. And it's just like all of a sudden, this picture of the ocean, and then it kind of ends the section. Which is really interesting because section 3 is like water. That's kind of the main theme of section 3. As in not section 3 in section 2. That's confusing. I hope that makes sense. Like the next part of the book. So it feels like this foreshadowing, and actually throughout this East Coker, there's these like little lines dropped about the ocean, which I think is a really interesting way of setting up the next thing. Okay, so looking at section 2, this is actually related to section 2 in the first part. And a couple things that are related about it. Number 1, some of the themes are similar. And number 2, it uses that rhyme scheme again, which I talked about that in the last video. So it's a little, I'll do my best to explain the rhyme scheme. I feel like if you're looking at it, it's really easy to see. It might be harder to explain. So he's got a set of 4 lines that have this rhyme scheme, and at the end he has a set of 4 lines, and then everything in the middle is like this mirrored rhyme scheme. So it's like, I'll just making up the numbers, it's like line 5 rhymes with line 10, and line 6 rhymes with line 9, and line 7 rhymes with line 8. So it's like this mirrored rhyme thing, and then the 3 in the middle all rhyme. So it's nice. I think rhyming is a powerful tool. I do appreciate when it's like a little bit more abstracted, and words can feel right, and it's spread out enough where you're not quite fully knowing. Like, you really have to look at it to figure out, okay, why does that word feel right, or why does that word feel like it's ringing a little bit more? And again, like I talked about this in the last video, just him using all the tools, and it's common for some, but especially people who are like defining modernism in any field, to really reject a lot of the past. And I think that's maybe helpful in like defining yourself. Like, no, really, I'm modern. But I think if we want to make the best art, like, let's take it all and use what's good and appropriate for that specific part. So the first part of section 2 is having all these like contradictory things that like don't go together. So what is the late November doing with the disturbance of the spring? So it's like November and spring together. It's like that, they don't go together. Creatures of the summer heat and snowdrops writhing under feet. So summer animals in the snow. Late roses filled with early snow. So, roses don't bloom in winter. So again, and I talked about this in the introduction, these are just more examples of like this mix of these things that don't go together. And I would say broad strokes, a lot of that is just like, we are in this in-between world. So he talks about like, we're living in partial ecstasy and partial horror. And those things are like intricately, is that the word? those are connected in our like human experience. And all of those, I feel like, is just him reinforcing that throughout the whole book. Okay, so going on, this is still in section 2. So it's kind of, even the sections have these kind of like blocks where like, okay, these are all rhyming and these are kind of dealing with this, and then it moves on. And it almost feels like a change of section. So we're going to jump down to, okay, so this is like, if you're following along, this is like line 75 or somewhere around there. Okay, what was to be the value of the long looked forward to, the long hoped for calm, the autumnal serenity, and the wisdom of age? Had they deceived us or deceived themselves? The quiet-voiced elders, bequeathing us merely a recipe for deceit. The serenity only a deliberate heptitude. The wisdom only the knowledge of dead secrets. Okay, so that kind of thing keeps going. And he's knocking wisdom here, which is a funny thing to knock, but so if we think about this in time, we have people who have lived through time, and that has resulted in certain fruit or certain experiences, and then they take that experience and they project it on the future. So that's wisdom. I know I've gone through this. Do this or don't do this. Take my advice. And so a couple things why he's knocking that. I mean, wisdom is normally thought of as a good thing. Number one, so he talks about movement, and the pattern is movement, and time is always changing. So things are always being rearranged. It's like every moment is recreation. Every moment, everything is new. So if you're going to take this frozen thing from the past and apply it to next year or 10 years away, it's like, that's not the time anymore. Like, those are dead secrets, that's, as he puts it. So that's the first thing. The second thing is pride. And it's like, oh, I know what will happen. So again, this is talking about like projection on the future. And wisdom and pride, it's like you can gain some wisdom, but right underneath that is pride, which is, not good. So skipping down, so there's more in that section, but essentially it's all like reiterating that same thing. So skipping down, do not let me hear of the wisdom of old men, but rather of their folly, their fear of fear and frenzy, their fear of possession, of belonging to another, or to others, or to God. The only wisdom we can hope to acquire is the wisdom of humility. Humility is endless. Whew, that's one of those lines for me that's like, that sometimes I read poetry and there's lines that are like seared in my brain. Humility is endless. That's one for me where it's just like, that's so true. It depends on what you believe about the world, but I won't go off on a tangent on that. I could talk about a lot of things around that. I won't. That is such, I love that line. Probably because I need it. Yeah. So it's kind of, I won't even go into it. Such a good line. Okay, so after that, the houses are all gone under the sea, the dances are all gone under the hill. And that's the end of section 2. Now those are referencing the beginning at section 1, talking about houses being built and torn down, and then going into the past, and the rustic dancers. So there's so many things in this poem that are connected to other things, which is one of the things that makes it super rich. It's also another thing that makes repeated reading really enjoyable, because it's like you don't see that reading 1, 2, or 3, but then those things start to happen on like 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So another element that makes this poem super rich. All right, going to section 3. Now section 3 also feels related to section 3 in the first part, and it's kind of like related, but it's opposite. So that section 3 in the first part, Burnt Norton, is like modern life and distraction and kind of this negative view of like humanity in time and in this like weird in-between place. And the highlight line there is distracted by distraction from a distraction, or something like that. I might be messing it up. And this one feels related to that, but now the distractions have been removed, and that's like maybe unpleasant. Let me read some of it and then I'll talk about it again. Okay, so this is just the beginning of section 3. Oh, dark, 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 they all go into the dark. The vacant interstellar spaces, the vacant into the vacant, the captains, merchant, bankers, eminent men of letters, the generous patrons of art, the statesmen and the rulers. That keeps going on, I'm going to skip down. And we all go with them into the silent funeral, nobody's funeral, for there is no one to bury. I said to my soul, be still, and let the dark come upon you, which shall be the darkness of God, as in a theater. The lights are extinguished, for the scene is to be changed. Skipping on ahead. Leaving only the growing terror of nothing to think about, or when, under ether, the mind is conscious, but conscious of nothing. Okay, so this a modern parallel to what I feel like this is talking about, just like within the last decade, is COVID. So a lot of people I've talked to talked about that period where it's like, I can't go to work, I can't go to school, I'm stuck at home. That was super unpleasant. It's like, I don't want this, I don't like this. But a lot of people have talked about that was a turning point in their life. So it's like all of these things are stripped away, and they realized really big things about themselves. So one person, they had this, that I talked to, it's like they had this side job that they just like didn't like, and they had done it for years. And COVID took that away, and it's like this moment of clarity. It's like, why am I doing that? This is like torture. I need to quit. And that's like a simple example. Or people just, these like emotional breakthroughs because of distractions are brushed away. And I feel like he's using darkness as a symbol for that. So the opposite of being distracted by distractions is being alone with yourself, with your thoughts, which is often scary. And we live in a very distracted world where you can actually avoid that almost all the time. I mean, you can go to sleep with the TV on, you can put music on in the car. And another way of saying it, I think, is a death and rebirth, and darkness being that. So normally darkness is kind of a negative symbol, and here it's darkness unto redemption. So it's kind of putting that on its head a little bit. Okay, yeah, I think that's all I wanted to say for that section. Again, I mean, you got to read the book, so I'm not hitting everything, and there's like a bunch of amazing stuff everywhere, but I'm just hitting like the broad stroke things. Okay, so going down to section 4, this feels like some of the same idea actually to the last section. The wounded surgeon plies the steel that questions the distempered part. Beneath the bleeding hands we feel the sharp compassion of the healer's art, resolving the enigma of the fevered chart. Okay, so what does that mean? So if we need a surgeon, we have a problem. So you could say we're broken. The surgeon, the wounded surgeon. Okay, so the surgeon's messed up, also broken, and the surgeon has bleeding hands. Okay, so we're broken and the surgeon is broken, and the surgeon is here to fix us. So that's kind of what's going on here. And I think that's kind of like the very general picture. And then we could zoom in. It's like, what does that mean? And I think there's room for interpretation of what what he's saying here. What I would say that means is that actually, ironically, so we're in this mixed place of like life and death and brokenness and wholeness, that actually our experience of brokenness can be our healing. And so it's like we need to be fixed, and a broken person can be a part of us being fixed. That's what I would say. And again, there's room for what that means, but that's what it means to me when I read it. Now, with that, you might have noticed we have another rhyme scheme here. So is it this whole section? Yeah, it's this whole section. It's in groups of 5, and it's A, B, A, B, B. So like here, steal and feel, part, art, chart is the rhyme there. The next one, disease, please, nurse, curse, worse. So how many of these are there? There's 5. That's interesting. 5 lines, and then 5 of those, like 5 fives. And I feel like all of those feel pretty similar. So it's like, our only health is the disease if we obey the dying nurse. So that feels like another way of saying the same thing. Okay, so I'm going to skip down to the last one, because that one feels the last set of these 5. The dripping blood, our only drink, the bloody flesh, our only food, in spite of which we like to think that we are sound, substantial flesh and blood. Again, in spite of that, we call this Friday good. I feel like that's something that maybe a lot of people would miss. Like, okay, dripping blood, we're drinking blood and we're eating people, like, it sounds like cannibalism. So this is another biblical reference, specifically to the cross, so Jesus. And so we call this Friday good. Good Friday is the day that he died. And in communion, you take a piece of bread and wine or juice representing the body and the blood of Jesus. So again, we were talking about like brokenness unto health. And if we look at the story of Jesus, it's like death unto resurrection. So it's that same message again. Okay, so that covers that section. Let's see. All right, so we're going to go to section 5. Now, section 5 in Burnt Norton also is the section that talked about poetry and language, and that comes back here. So another thread running throughout this poem. I'm going to skip down the 3rd line of section 5. Trying to learn to use words in every attempt is a wholly new start and a different kind of failure, because one has only learnt to get the better of words, for the thing one no longer has to say, or the way in which one is no longer disposed to say it. And so each venture is a new beginning, a raid on the inarticulate, with shabby equipment always deteriorating. So again, it's like once the word is down, it's frozen, and it's decaying, and it's dying, and it's losing relevance. And wanting something that's transcendent, and even the desire to say words that you cannot say, to explain things you can't explain, all of this like transcendent desire, that it's like he knows that can't happen. I love the line, shabby equipment always deteriorating. So it's just, and I believe that's about language and words there. Okay, so we're going to go down to, there's a little bit more there, but skipping ahead. So this is right at the end of section 5. Love is most nearly itself when here and now cease to matter. So that, I feel like, is a really key line. And love is this thing that is explained as timeless. So again, we're talking about time, and if we get real specific and apply this to like a relationship, the here and now not mattering, it's like a family member and they're having a bad day, and the now is you're having a bad day and you're being grumpy or short, and it's like what you're doing today, my love totally transcends that. So that's just a real simple example of how I feel like when love is most nearly itself here and now cease to matter. But again, also speaking to this transcendence, eternal, timeless thing. Okay, old men ought to be explorers. So we're talking about old men with wisdom and their hardened pride and projecting on the future, and explore is going to new places, essentially being a learner, and that's humility. You don't know what's going to happen. Here and there does not matter. We must be still and still moving. So again, movement, stillness, into another intensity, into a further union, a deeper communion. So communion, Good Friday, the body and the blood of Jesus. Through the dark cold and the empty desolation, the wave cry, the wind cry, the vast waters. So here's another ocean reference, and that's setting up the next section, which talks about rivers and ocean. Okay, that is it for East Coker. Thank you for watching.